So imagine telling someone for their entire life, it's not okay to be a man. 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 And then boom, they turn 30. And the society's like, we need men. Where are all the men? We need men to step up. His partner is like, hey, I need you to be a man. I need you to lead here. Hey, I need when I don't feel safe, I need you to step forward. And he's like, I can't do it.
So good to be back to the podcast from a month-long hiatus, everyone. Thank you so very much for giving me the time and the space that I needed in order to recover, refuel, and rejuvenate my passion for what it is that I enjoy most about podcasting. Over the last 3 years, I've learned a lot about myself through the effort and through the process of podcasting. 1, finding guests. 2, understanding the topics that were out there that we needed to cover on each and every single episode. And then 3, publishing and producing each and every episode took an extra 5 or 10 hours per week per episode just to deliver the audio content to you. So for everyone who's supported the podcast in the last 3 years, heartfelt thank you goes out to you specifically. And for everyone who left us a 5-star review and a written rating, again, humbly thanking you for that. If you haven't done so yet, please head on over to your favorite podcast platform. Give us a 5-star rating and a written review, because that really helps us get the content of the podcast out to more people. While I was on hiatus, while I was on that 4-week break, I was able to recenter and refocus exactly what it is that I want to accomplish with the podcast. And I am so excited to bring you my new vision. And today is the very first preview of what you can expect to find from the future of the Believe, Be Real, Be Bold podcast. And you might have seen a few things on Instagram. If you're not following us there, please head on over to @Believe, Be Real, Be Bold. And that's what we use the Instagram account for, is sharing funny, heartfelt, meaningful memes with our community. So can't wait to meet you over on the Instagram podcast handle, because there are going to be some big changes coming within our community in the next week or so. What I want to preview for you today is the new look of the podcast. The Challenger podcast is coming to you with a refreshed, refocused, and recentered mission, vision, and purpose. The Challenger podcast comes from my own Enneagram personality type, which is what I've used over the last 4 years to really uncover what self-awareness is all about. That's where I began to start to look inward through the shadow and into the ego to truly understand what it was that was holding me back in relationships. So let's begin today's podcast episode titled The Challenger and the Nice Guy, with a little bit of a recap over the last 3 years of hosting the podcast. And we'll use the acronym SEAL in order to do that. So the S stands for self-awareness. What I've come to understand is that without self-awareness, we can't move forward. Without being aware of the underlying subconscious beliefs, limiting beliefs, and ego-driven decisions that we make on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis, we're not able to identify what those things are so that we can work through them, whether that be a counselor, a coach, a therapist, or a trusted friend that can help you work through those limiting beliefs that come up along the way. So self-awareness for me is being able to look in the mirror and seeing the blind spots that I never knew existed before. And one of those tools is the Enneagram. That's the E on our acronym today. S for self-awareness, E for the Enneagram. That's my favorite tool in order to dig deep into what's going on behind the scenes. What's operating as a past pattern? What's operating as a limiting belief that's holding us back in our relationships, our lives, our businesses, and preventing us from living the life that we've always dreamed of? So the Enneagram is the tool that I turned to first 4 years ago to understand more about who I was and how the world saw me. What I began to experience as I peeled back the layers through the lens of the Enneagram is that I have a lot of tendencies that show up that I may not be the most proud of. And that's exactly what the shadow means to me. What are those things that I may have shame around? What are those things that I may have hesitancy to let other people see? And that's what's hiding within the shadow. That's what the ego is protecting ourselves from sharing with other people. And that's the one thing that I've learned over the course of the last 3 years of hosting the podcast is loving those things about yourself that you want to hide from somebody else is the path to uncovering what it is that you're meant for in this world. Without revealing those shadowy parts, the ego-driven parts of ourselves, we stay hidden and unseen. We're not relatable. People don't gravitate to us. We don't build the relationships that we're looking for. And so that's why the Enneagram is an amazing tool to help us uncover an additional layer of self-awareness. The A in our acronym, SEAL, stands for attachment styles or attachment theory. It's something that I've definitely found a lot of expansive work in my relationships over the last few years, is understanding what I feel and what I think from the avoidant tendencies that show up in my relationships. To recap, there are 4 or maybe 6 types of attachment styles. You have secure, anxious, avoidant, fearful avoidant, anxious preoccupied, and dismissive avoidant. So those are some of those attachment styles that are being researched right now and are used to help teach other people how they show up in relationships. Have you ever wondered why there's so much conflict in your relationship? Well, it could possibly be either you or your partner are anxious and the other person is avoidant. And when those two attachment styles gravitate to each other, it's known as the anxious avoidant trap. And that's where relationships can become very volatile. And to use a popular word in the world right now, toxic. And it's also a lens at which we can view our relationships a little bit more objectively as opposed to subjectively. If I have found self-awareness through attachment styles, then I can actually go to my partner and say, hey, this is what's coming up for me. As an avoidant, I tend to do this. And we can sit down as a partnership, as a couple, with the boundaries of our relationship agreement and say to one another, here's what's coming up for me. I'd like to discuss it. And what that does is it cuts off the anxious avoidant trap before it even begins, or it stops it dead in its tracks. So that's what we're going to look for when we have found self-awareness through the Enneagram. And then when we begin to repair those shadowy wounds and ego-driven past patterns, well, then when we get into a relationship, we're going to take a look at it through the attachment theory lens. If you're secure and you start to get back out there and you're attracting anxiously attached people or avoidantly attached people, well, then we're going to help you understand what to do next. And then finally, our last letter of the acronym is L, leadership. What I've found is that self-leadership and leadership in a relationship is how we work through those past patterns and limiting beliefs that can show up in a relationship. What self-leadership means to me is that I establish while I'm single what it is that I value as an independent person. Is that valuing quality time? Is that valuing physical touch? Well, then self-leadership comes into play by understanding what those values are and how we're going to take the initiative to share that with our potential partner. So that's a brief introduction to the new face, to the new mission, to the new vision and culture and purpose behind the Challenger podcast. I'm going to be sharing with you through the lens of self-awareness, the Enneagram, attachment styles, and leadership on upcoming episodes of the Challenger podcast. Head on over to your favorite podcast platform. Subscribe now to get you more information about this awesome new project that we're starting. So to give you a little bit better picture of what the podcast is going to sound and look like, I'm going to share with you today episode number 1 with Traver Boehm, where he and I are talking about the nice guy. And that's capital N, capital G. And it causes a lot of relationship challenges between partners because one person is craving for the other one to take the lead, and that person isn't stepping up to the plate. Here's a conversation about nice guy syndrome and how it shows up in the world today for men. What is up? There's the man.
How are you, my friend? I love the background. Look at you, all fancy.
Thank you. I searched Amazon for like room or sound deadening artwork.
Yeah.
And so it's funny that you mentioned that, because these two pieces might fall down in the middle of our recording, because
just want everybody to know that this is some real life shit going on here. And this isn't scripted.
this is important. This is really important. They're just hung up with like the not double-sided glue, but like the molded putty.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Good to see you, brother.
Thank you, man. I've already hit record just so I don't forget doing that later.
I am fresh off the mat, so I'm a little
Nice.
bit stinky. I'm a little bit like, what the fuck just happened to me? Oh yeah, okay. So if I just wander off, you'll get it. You're like, how did they pass my guard? How is that even possible? I thought my guard was perfect. Oh, sorry, man. What were we talking about?
I completely relate, because jujitsu, we've talked about this before. It is my passion, my hobby, like the thing that keeps me fresh and motivated. And like, I was chatting about this yesterday with a couple of functional medicine doctors, and I'm like, well, it's this loop, it's this cycle of like, jujitsu holds me accountable and disciplined on my workouts. My workouts help me perform better in jujitsu. And it's this positive feedback loop that it's like raising all ships over here.
Yeah. I appreciate that so much. I stretch because I want to be good at jujitsu. I run, and I fucking hate running. I think it's the worst thing on the planet because it's good for jujitsu. Like, I stretch my neck in the morning. There's so much. It is such immediate feedback. Right? Like, I can go into the gym and have a really lucky day and deadlift, hit my PR. And I might not have done anything well and on point for 2 weeks before that. But jiu-jitsu is like, nope, you didn't stretch, you didn't eat well. Good luck. You're about to get your ass handed to you.
It's probably the thing that teaches me how to be most present when I don't want to be present. Like, we talk about fight or flight. It's coming up a lot in the last year of like heightened cortisol levels across the board. Well, you're literally in like fight or flight mode on the mat. And if you're not present, that's when you get hurt.
Agreed. Yeah. Like, one thought, oh, I wonder what that is. Boom.
Yeah, I'm submitted.
After holding your elbow. Yeah.
So what'd you guys work on over at the academy, right?
Yeah, I'm at the academy. I'm like, I was a smaller guy until, I'm still relatively small for the fight world, but I was 20 pounds lighter when I was fighting. And this was in the, early 2000s, when it was like, oh, everybody's on juice. So I got used to the bottom position. I got used to fighting from the guard. I loved the guard. I loved the bottom. I was comfortable on that. And so I'm actually learning just like the nuances of a mount, of like 3 different positions in the mount, as opposed to I'm mounted. Now my job is just to rain elbows until the ref stops. It's like, now you actually have to learn how to submit from here, hold from here, counter from here. So I'm doing a lot, like, for the next 2 months. Yes, I'm rolling in class. Yes, I'm doing all the things. But when I get in the mount, it's like, okay, slow down, hang here, just see what happens here. It's this big noticing, rather than I want to go from mount to the back to the choke. It's I want to go from mount to stay on mount, to move up mount, to go to high mount. Ooh, they put me back down into low mount. What's going on in mid mount? Okay, no, we're not going to go for the submission, even though we see it, because we want to stay here and actually get some time here. So that's really what I'm working on.
Yeah, position over submission is what my coaches are always telling us. And if you're in competition, not an MMA fight, you have to hold that position for 3 seconds, or you don't get the points.
Right.
So we are in a competition school, and that's their thing, is like, they produce, they're ranked as the #1 fight team in the world for MMA. Brilliant. Right. So like, I'm going to trust my coaches. That's why I'm there, is because like you used to be a CrossFit coach. I'm a strength coach. I don't want to coach. Well, no, I don't want to coach myself anymore.
Yeah.
I want coaches who are going to coach me.
Yeah.
And that's what jujitsu is.
I remember just going back in and being like, I just want to be a student. Like, literally, this is the only time you'll ever hear me say this in my life. Tell me what to do. Just fucking tell me what to do. I'm tired of telling people what to do. Yeah, let me be a student, and let me sweep the mat out. Let me be part of the team. Let me not run the damn team. So I feel you, man.
I'm right there with you, man. I've loved watching your journey over there with Robert,
Thank
and I
you.
got the chance to chat with him. You know, after hearing him on your podcast,
Mm,
I was like, I got to talk to Robert because, you know, I'm very philosophical when it comes to what jujitsu means to me in my life.
yeah.
It is my greatest teacher.
Mm,
I have not learned more about myself, and this is going to be pertinent to our conversation today, is like, I've learned more about myself as a man. I saw my nice guy showing up on the mat. I played from the bottom for the first year that I was at Easton when I changed
yep.
schools because
Yep.
I wanted to be a good teammate.
Mm,
You know what?
mm.
Fuck that. That doesn't do anyone any good.
Right. 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 Right.
Most specifically, it doesn't do me any good because I'm only one dimensional.
Right.
Well, like you, okay, now I've learned how to sweep people from the bottom. Now I've
Mhm.
learned how to choke people from the bottom. And now the rest of my game, a big hole of it was, what do I do on the top? Neon
Mhm.
belly, mount, side control, half guard. Like,
Mhm.
okay, great. And I won't be stuck at blue belt forever if I choose to do that.
No, you won't. No, 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 you won't. And you're right. You're not helping anybody,
I'm
right?
not.
And sure, it's great to have a bottom game. You got to have a bottom game, and you can't just be reactive in this sport,
Mm.
or they're
Mm-hmm.
going to run into a limit, right? You have to be offensive at some point, and the unwillingness to be offensive is really insightful. Why don't you want to be offensive?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you only want to catch people as opposed to produce your own openings? Right? It's a very different mindset that translates everywhere. Are you just reactive in your business? Or do you
Mm-hmm.
want to actually go out and hunt down clients? Do you want to grow and expand? Do you want to take over and perhaps buy out other businesses? It's this very different mentality of the reactor versus the predator. And I use that second word with grace and with a heart centered and, with responsibility, but there's nothing wrong with it. And I think
Nope.
the more men especially tap into that, like, yeah, it's okay to want to go out and get, it's okay to want to go out and build. It's okay to want more. It's just the means and the methods that you use to do it. That's where we have to have the checks and balances.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, that's going to be the meat and potatoes of our conversation today. I feel like I really appreciated you inviting me to the live event
Thank you for
last
coming.
few weeks ago.
Yeah, so good.
Um, I think that I was like, you know, do I want to? Yes, I absolutely want a community of men in person,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because the alliance is online and then my church group is in person every other week.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, like I knew there was a reason why I wanted to go and I should go.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad I did. So thanks for
Hey,
hosting.
truly my pleasure. It's so good just to see any man the light bulb go off of like, oh, there's something I'm missing, and this is important, and this is nourishing in the ways that nothing else is, and holy shit, this has the potential to change all the things I've wanted to change, but I'm just continually going right, go right, go right, go right. And we say, hey, take a moment and come left for a bit and just see what happens to all that shit that you're chasing. Wow. You have a whole different perspective on it. And you as a man are significantly different. So you don't have to chase. You get to watch things become attracted to you rather than this grasping that so many men are stuck in.
Mm.
Yeah, I really appreciate you being there.
Yeah, totally relatable. Yeah, it was my pleasure. I was really surprised by the third exercise that we got the chance to do. So was that your opportunity to guide us through the exercise?
Yeah, that was mine. Yeah.
Yeah, remind me of the instructions and I'll give some feedback on that exercise, what my experience was.
Oh, it was the mask exercise, Dave.
Yeah, that's right. What masks are
Yeah,
you
it was the
wearing?
mask exercise of right on the front of a piece of paper, how you present yourself to the world. And then right on the other side of the paper, how you actually feel and how you actually exist. Right? We can dive into a big challenge that a lot of humans have, but I would say especially men, is that we live in a state of non-reality. Of like, oh, my Instagram profile has this many followers. I curate my pictures. I only talk about the good things. I don't tell my partner when I'm struggling. If something comes up, I don't admit it. I don't have a team of brothers around me where I go, hey, I'm fucking up, right? And I need some help. Or them going, hey, you're pretending not to fuck up and we're watching you fuck up. So we're going to talk about it. It really is the duality of the forward facing presentation that we give to the world and what's real.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, for people listening to this, I had everybody in the group write down, confident, always have it together, funny, everything's always okay. I can handle my booze. I'm handling everything. I'm not insecure. And then on the other side, like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I feel lost. I feel lonely. I feel sad. I'm frustrated. I'm confused. I'm disappointed. Right? Like, which is, we can't handle anything until it's real, or until it's spoken about, which is, again, if we circle this back to jiu-jitsu, if I tell you I have the best triangle defense in the world, like, bro, like, look at my Instagram page. I am the triangle defense guy. And then I show up and everybody fucking triangles me. You're going to be like, yeah, here's this group of guys. We're going to come talk to you about your triangle defense after practice. But
The
we're
mats
not
don't
living in a
lie.
state of reality. Yeah.
Right.
I think it's getting easier and easier for people to lie, but the ramifications of doing so are getting bigger and bigger. At some point, so many men realize, it's like the quote from Fight Club. We've all been raised on television to believe that one day we'd all be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars, but we won't. And we're slowly learning that fact, and we're very, very pissed off. And we go, oh, you and I live here in Colorado. There was a shooting just up the road in Boulder. Okay, how much of that was schizophrenia, and how much of that was entitlement that wasn't coming true? Mm-hmm. Same with the shooting in Georgia. How much of that was racially motivated? How much of that was, I think I should have something and I can't get it, and so I have no other outlet but to enact rage on the society.
Right. And that's certainly going to be part of our conversation today. I think that you bringing it up is really important, and I want to get your perspective on it, because I listened to your 7-minute podcast episode. There it goes. See what I mean? The 7-minute podcast happened. Yeah, right. This podcast episode today about it's okay to be a man. But before we move on,
sure.
My experience in that exercise, like the men calling us out, the men calling us forward, of like, no, that's not true. Right. Here's what I see, and I'm going to be a reflection for you. So my mask that I wear, I wrote it down. I saved it in my phone because I didn't bring paper and a pen. I got that email after I left the house. My mask is that I'm all right. I'm successful. I'm happy. I'm sober. I'm coachable and teachable. I'm going places. I'm centered, grounded, and present. I'm a hero. And my reality, based on this exercise, is that I'm hustling. I'm broke. I think I spent my last $30 to come that night.
Oh, wow.
But the next week I made $6,000. So like,
yeah,
it's attributable to this exercise.
Yeah, sure.
Is like, I had to honestly say out loud, hey guys, I spent my last $40 to be here tonight.
Yeah. It
was that important for me to go. You know what I mean? Because I saw that on the horizon and I didn't know that the next week was coming. But my reality is I'm so fucking unhappy. And my reality is I'm addicted to abusing time.
Wow.
I'm stubborn and closed off. I'm stuck. And I'm scared of being seen.
Wow, brother. I appreciate you sharing this. Yeah.
Thanks, man. This is what I came away with from the exercise. And there was 2 other men in my group of 3. And there's a doctor, and there's an entrepreneur, and a completely successful business person who's created something twice over in his life. You know? And it was my chance to like show up at a community of men in person, and it's held in a weightlifting gym, which is the only one in Denver, a weightlifting club. So that's like that's my room, you know? Like, I'm comfortable in a weight room. We're sitting on benches and not chairs. I think you're sitting on a stack of bumper plates there for a little while instead of a chair.
Right.
You know, so like, completely within the theme of the night, we're in a weightlifting gym. It's grungy. It's loud. It's noisy.
Right.
It's dirty. 20 men who are showing up, and certainly there were tears, man.
Yeah.
But like, this realization that although like I'm sober curious on substances, alcohol and cigarettes and marijuana, I'm really limiting my alcohol in the last year. You know, ever since the end of July, I turned 40 and there was just this light bulb going off in my brain of like, try this for a while. Cause the shit where you're drinking and numbing isn't working for you.
Right.
So, but that I'm sober mask that I wear, I'm still addicted to other stuff, like abusing time.
Sure.
What's the best and highest use of my time? And that's what I had to face that night in the company of other men who are open and willing to do that work.
Brilliant. What do you think is the reason behind abuse of time for you?
Man, I think it's a self-sabotage prevention of success and being of greatness. Like I'm hiding behind I'm so busy. You know, well, I think that a lot of Americans equate busyness with success.
Sure.
A lot of men do too.
Yeah.
You know, to narrow it down.
Yeah, one of the guys in the six today made a post of like, there's a difference between busy and effective.
Yeah.
Remember that. There's a difference. Yeah, and perhaps an opportunity for you is to look at how do you feel when you're not busy? And what about
how do I
that
sit in the quiet?
Right. Yeah, or do you feel unimpactful? Do you feel worthless? Do you feel like you're wasting time? Do you feel like you have no right to relax? There's so much to look at that, especially you said it for men, we become addicted to busyness because the lack of it is terrifying. And I've been in the exact same boat. Remember an old employee when I had 3 different companies going said like, you would lose your mind with 2 days off, wouldn't you? And I was like, get the fuck out of my office.
Yeah, if we were talking specifically about the Enneagram, which is one of my favorite things ever, I know you're a 1 on the Enneagram, right?
8.
You're an 8. I'm an 8.
Power recognizes power.
Well, you put a couple of unintegrated men who are 8s in the same room, and you're not going to come away with a good result.
True.
But I've always related to that of like, yeah, busy equals great, busy equals success, and I have 3 businesses also. And I have to acknowledge the fact that one suffers because I'm focused on the other. And that's not what I want in my life. And so the realization that facing of the addiction to abusing time, to just staying busy because I think it's productive, slapped me in the face. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to quit. I literally said, I'm like, I'm going to fire myself from one of my businesses. I'm going to quit it. And the next week, why it was important for me to bring it up, I made $6,000 the next week.
Not in that business, in the other ones.
In the one that I should be focusing on, actually. Yeah. So the 2 that I quit for the week, the one that's most important to me flourished.
Is there a story around safety? If you don't have 3 different businesses, then perhaps like they're your imaginary safety net?
Oh, that's a good question. I really think that there's if I'm being completely honest, look at me, I've created these 3 amazing things, and they're all amazing.
Sure.
But what I've come to realize is that they all do the same thing. So why did I create 3 different verticals, 3 different silos, compartmentalizing my greatness into 3 different things when I really just have a home base of one thing that I'm really good at, sharing the benefits of fitness, nutrition, and personal growth for mental health.
Yeah. What if you went all in on going all in?
Yeah, that's right, man. That's the question I have to ask myself, and I'm receiving it very well from another challenger.
Yeah, it's what's scary about it, right? No, one of my favorite questions to ask, and one of the questions I most dislike being asked, is what is the feeling you're unwilling to feel? And is it boredom? Is it loneliness? Is it lack of importance? Is it rest? Is it open space, right? Like when you can really narrow down what is the thing I'm trying to avoid by keeping myself so busy. And here's the mind fuck exercise. purposefully going into that.
Amen, man.
Just being like, you know what? I'm going to be lazy for a day
Amen.
consciously.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't really move through a feeling until you fully dove into it. Right. Which is why a lot of people who are sober are like, I did it at 45. Like, I have no desire to, like, oh man, I missed my 20s. I missed all those. Like, I don't, if I never stand in line to get into another facility in my life, it'll be too soon. So the idea of like driving by a bar and seeing a line outside, I'm like, you guys are okay, get it out of your systems. I did that. I would rather throw myself down a flight of stairs than stay in line to get somewhere and yell at people to drink. But for a lot of guys who hit their 30s and hit their 40s and never got that out of their system, they never fully dove into the misery of it. So really, I mean, you get this. If we go back to a jiu-jitsu analogy, I don't like being in the mount, which is why I'm sitting in it over and over and over until I really, really fall in love with it. My absolute first inclination when I get on the mount is to roll onto my back and try to triangle somebody, because that's comfortable. That willingness to say, I'm going to sit in this discomfort until I own it, and then I marry it, and then I understand the nuances of it.
Right, of course. Yeah, taking me back 4.5 years to why I started jujitsu in the first place is I needed to get far outside of my comfort zone. Adult co-ed softball wasn't doing it for me anymore. So I kept driving by this boxing gym, right? And I saw the sign on the outside of the building and it said boxing. Okay, I've got experience in boxing. I boxed for a summer.
Yeah.
I really love the cathartic nature of hitting the mitts, man. It's just, there's something about it. And I went in and I tried boxing. They gave me like 5 free sessions or something like that, because I was a guy from the neighborhood. And I spread them out over the course of 5 weeks so I could get through that last co-ed softball season of mine. And so I started in boxing, and I was watching jujitsu happen at the same time every evening. And I'm like, you know, it's not what I thought it was going to be. When my daughter talked about doing jujitsu for a couple years from 13 to 15, she's 18 now. I was like, okay, I don't understand, but I saw it for the first time, and I saw the gi, and I'd only ever seen the no gi or the MMA version of jujitsu before that. And as soon as I saw the gi, I'm like, wait, I can grab a guy by the jacket and defend myself, because that's realistic to me. And so I jumped on the mats, and I've been obsessed ever since. 4.5 years later, you know, I joined because I was claustrophobic as a kid. I had a neighbor buddy of mine. I was always like his little sidekick, you know, wherever he went, I went, but I was the little guy.
Yeah.
And he's now my brother-in-law. He's been married to my sister for like 21 years.
No shit. That's
Yeah.
an amazing story.
But he used to sit on me, man. He used to sit on my chest, and just, we would try to wrestle, but he's in a different weight class than me.
Sure.
And I got so uncomfortable with it. I would get so frustrated with it. I'd get so scared. And then when I got to jujitsu, I'm like, wait, they're going to teach me how to handle that pressure on my chest. And I think there's been one panic attack in a jujitsu gym, unrelated to a position that I was in. One time when I wasn't present, and I could definitely just tap out to the claustrophobia. And then the rest of the time, it's been a really enjoyable experience of learning to push the edge of, okay, I have not spent, okay, since then I've spent many rounds of 5 minutes each underneath a black belt when he's in the mount, because he's just better at the sport than I am. But along the way, in 4.5 years, I've certainly gotten a lot better at defending myself when I'm in bottom mount. And that guy's sitting on my chest. He's 240 pounds, and he's got 15 years of experience, and he knows what he's doing next. He knows what I'm doing next. And all I have to do is survive for 5 minutes. And it makes me better prepared to walk out in the world.
For sure. It's rep after rep of learning how to breathe through 1/16 of one nostril. And you're like, I'm good. I'm totally good, you guys.
Yeah, man. I saw the nice guy show up on the mats, and I was frustrated with it. I was actually plateaued, and I was wondering why. And it was because I wasn't taking what was what was there for me.
Sure.
I wasn't using every opportunity that I possibly could to grow as a man.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I want to talk about today is I asked our community, mostly made up of women, for questions ahead of time, because they're like, wait, you're interviewing Traver? We freaking love Traver.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ask him these 4 things. So I got those written down for later. But in the beginning, I want to talk about why it's okay to be a man.
Let's dive in.
Yeah, let's dive in. And it's prompted because both yourself and Connor shared the article about the boys in elementary or middle school standing up and having to apologize for their gender's behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think is a great recipe to create boys who grow into men who hate women. And so if we want to solve this problem, we actually have to get to the root of it, and we have to be honest. And that's something that's very scary right now and very unpopular and loaded, is actually, let's talk about some truth. And that's a big part of it. And if we let's dive right into it. It actually dovetails with the nice guy. One of the most impactful parts for me of teaching this Kill the Nice Guy course was I asked all of these guys, and for people who don't understand this, nice guy is capitalized, capital N, capital G. It's not like how to not be a good person. The course is how to not be really codependent as a man. And
a pushover and a doormat and a people pleaser
and a wolf in sheep's clothing. Right?
Yeah.
Someone who's actually dangerous, someone who's actually manipulative, someone who actually doesn't have a backbone and isn't standing up for himself, and therefore can't stand up or provide a container for his partner. So I asked them early on to walk me back, all of you, to the first time you remember being rejected. Right. And it's early stuff. It's like first grade, second grade. It could be a divorce. It could be something, but like walk me back to that one rejection that stands out. And what was the unintended consequence, Dave, of that question was this: how many guys, and eventually it became, okay, all of you at some point were told explicitly or implicitly, or were shown, or had to stand up in a fucking school cafeteria or whatever it is, you learned it's not okay to be a man. It's not okay to be male. And most of these guys are over 30. So it's not even as problematic as it is now. Like this was back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Now it's a shit show. Now we actually have what we saw online, which is a social justice explosion that's gone into radicalism that, again, people don't want to talk about. But a man who literally, and yes, women are told it's okay, it's not okay to be a woman. Trans people are told it's not okay to be trans. Gay people are told it's not okay to be gay. But we're specifically talking about men here. When we tell someone at that age, or it gets implanted in them, it's not okay to be a man, then there's going to be a set of behaviors that come off of that, which are self-destructive and outwardly destructive. What do you know? We see a bunch of those. Any woman who's dated a nice guy has experienced those. Us nice guys have also experienced those, right? So there's twofold that happens here. One, you become destructive. And then two, when told by society, when asked by a partner, when told by a boss, when in a situation that requires you to actually step forward as a man, you're going against this deep belief that what I'm about to do is counter to what I've been told. So imagine telling someone for their entire life, it's not okay to be a man. 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 And then boom, they turn 30. And the society's like, we need men. Where are all the men? We need men to step up. His partner is like, hey, I need you to be a man. I need you to lead here. Hey, I need when I don't feel safe, I need you to step forward. And he's like, I can't do it. Or in his head, he'll say, okay, I can do it. But in his heart, in his guts, he's literally in conflict with two very deep beliefs. And when that happens, it shuts men down, or it requires addiction. It requires some form of numbing so that they can deal with that conflict internally, which most of the time, Dave, they can't even put their hand on it. Like most men walking around who are nice guys, one, they don't know they're nice guys. And two, if we stopped them and said, hey, you know what? You're like following this very specific set of patterns that's we call the nice guy. And it stems from, at some point you were told or shown maybe once or repetitively, it's not okay to be a man. oh, now do you see
Mhm.
it? Right. I watched light bulb after light bulb go off in this class when how many guys were like, holy shit, I had no idea that when my parents got divorced and my mom pulled me aside and said, this is happening because dad's not a good guy. And then the next couple guys she dated were assholes. And she said, you see, all men are assholes. And then I grew up into a nice guy. Like, and I'm not blaming women for this. I'm just saying this is what happens. So it's okay. I want to say this. And I could say it to every other group we just mentioned. It's okay to be a man. Right? It's okay to be gay. It's okay to be trans. It's okay to be a woman. But we're talking about who are the most destructive people on the planet? Us. So
Yeah.
maybe we need to get this message across that it's okay to be a man. And we'll just start there. Yes, there is an extraordinary amount of responsibility that's going to come in the next sentence, but we can't get there until we get the it's just okay to be a man. That's the foundational piece upon which we will build everything else.
Right. Yeah, man, that hits home for me. And a lot like a lot of nice guys out there, it wasn't until the second time I read the book by Dr. Glover that it was like, aha. And there's a second caveat here. When I read the book for the second time, No More Mr. Nice Guy, I was in a room full of men who were here to support me on the journey. You know, it's been almost a year since I dove into the book a second time. And there was, you know, of course, we're sheltering in place. So I'm in isolation.
Sure.
I no longer have overworking to numb me out. I no longer have a social life. Like I really do enjoy trying new restaurants. I do. It's one of my favorite things. But I no longer had that to numb and to distract and to keep me busy. So I come home from the gym. It gets shut down a year ago, right? And I'm faced with all of this emptiness. And I went through the 5 stages of grief really quick. One, because I reached out to the Alliance and I said, I need help.
Good for
because
you.
I just lost my job and I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And in the first few months after that, huge transformation because I purposefully looked at what you asked me to look at earlier. What am I afraid of that I'm keeping myself so busy? So I looked at it, and there's a lot of words when you were talking about how a nice guy is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Okay. I limited my alcohol. I was forced to take a break from work, a lot of work. I was forced to do this. I was forced to look at these holes and these gaps in my own self-image, right? And what I discovered is codependency. What I discovered is the nice guy. What I discovered is a lot of patterns that I wasn't happy were in my life. And it was all instinctive. It was all instinctual down below the surface in my gut of like, that's what was leaking out for so many years. You say, very well put, it comes out sideways. And that's what I discovered to answer your question earlier of like, what am I afraid of when I look and when I feel that feeling? And I want to talk about that social justice of, okay, there's an example of it where the boys are meant to stand up and apologize for their gender. But in the other description of where nice guy comes from, it's not okay to be a man, and it's shaming somebody for being who they are. Whether it's a homosexual person, a woman, a trans person, like you were saying, we're putting shame on that person, and then they embody it, and then they change to comply, or they change to get love, or they change to feel seen, or they change to get heard.
Right.
And that's why nice guys build up resentment. And that's why when you said a woman who's dated a nice guy knows what I'm talking about, because all of a sudden they just explode because that resentment builds up for so long.
Yeah. And they go from, they're so disconnected from their primal side that they've gone so far to the love and light side that when they give up, when they do explode, they slam right back over to the primal side, which is in their biology. It's in our DNA. There's testosterone streaming through my system. So when I've had it, when the container explodes, the cup overflows, however we want to say it, I slam right back into my biology. And what is it okay for men to feel? It's okay for us to feel angry. We're not allowed to feel sad, but it's okay to feel angry. So it's like, oh, I'm allowed to feel angry. Oh, I'm going to get your attention when I'm rageful. Okay, cool. I couldn't get it otherwise. Or I couldn't get myself to even pay attention otherwise. I'm not allowed to feel sad. I'm not allowed to feel grief. Boom. We flip over here. And then this is when all of these explosions happen, either relationally or culturally, which we've seen. It's dangerous, man. It's real. A nice guy is really, really dangerous. I describe him as it's just a ticking time bomb. And to me, I said this last night on the last call with these guys, I would rather see a wolf in wolf's clothing, because then at least I know what I'm dealing with. I'm not going to let him in my house, let him eat my food, let him sleep in my bed, and then be like, holy shit, that's a wolf. But when he's in a sheep's clothing, we let him into the inner circle. People are vulnerable around him. People are open around him. And that's when he does wreaks the most havoc. So we're in a multifaceted conundrum here. The more we shame and put men down for being men culturally, the more there will be a cultural kickback. And so when I see shootings and I hear all these terrible statistics, I'm like, I know. What did you think was going to happen? But here's the challenge, brother. And I have a lot of empathy and compassion for this challenge. We as a culture aren't ready to have compassion for perpetrators while we're still being perpetrated. And so this is the like chicken and egg challenge, right? Like we have to look at all of these men who are doing horrible shit and say, except for the 1 or 2% of them who are just fucking gone, sociopath, psychopath, they were born that way, they're heavily traumatized. And so until we're willing to see people in a different light, until we're almost willing to move out of this, Hammurabi's eye for an eye code, where we want to see people punished. When they upset us, we want to punish them. That we're learning, especially here in the US with our prison population, it doesn't work. We take traumatized people, shove them around other traumatized people, let them back in society and be like, I hope you guys fixed yourselves. And what do you know? They're now more traumatized and also with new skills, but it's a challenge for us to say, wow. And it's just starting to shift. Like I've seen a little bit of a cultural shift around like, oh, that guy who he just dates 50 women at the same time. He's a fuck boy or whatever we want to call him. Oh, he watched his dad beat the shit out of his mother. Oh, he watched all of her boyfriends beat the shit out of him when he was 8 and he couldn't do anything about it. Oh, there's something else here that happened that turned him into the man he is. He's not just a bad dude. And so, okay, how do we deal with that person? Do we put him down further and be like, who you've become is a shithead and we don't like you? Or do we say, hey man, I imagine you are in so much pain you don't even know what to do. So here's a group full of men. I'm not going to ask you to dive all the way into it because that's going to be terrifying and it would blow your system. I just want you to say these words. I am sad. That's all you're going to do today. You do that, and you've done more to fix the problem than any shaming, blaming, putting down memes, whatever negative shit we want to say about men. That is how we solve this. The challenge is I'm not sure people actually do want to solve it. And that's a whole nother conversation, or they're not willing to go through the transition to looking at the problem in a different light that's holistic. Right? This is a whole separate conversation, but we treat addicts in the same way in this culture. Like, oh, we'll just lock them up. Right? That's how we cure addiction. We cure addiction with prison. Like, okay, how's that working for us? Right?
And cold turkey.
Yeah. Or just like, well, they're just not strong enough. Like they're weak-minded. They just need to make better decisions. Like we have, as a culture, we need to reorganize so much. And this is, your work around health and fitness, right? I know it's a meme, but we just went through an entire pandemic. I do not remember one thing about eating more vegetables. I never remember hearing one thing about, hey, you got to work out in your house. You have to go for walks. You have to meditate. You have to journal. You have to look at the things you're feeding your body with. Why? Because health is suddenly the most important thing on the planet. Nope. It was lockdowns, rights, vaccines, mayhem, etc. Not a single thing about health.
Yeah, I need to speak up louder then.
Yeah, man. Shit.
It goes back to the mask I wear of like, oh, I'm successful.
Right.
Well, the reality is that I may not want to be seen.
Right.
And
or challenged, right?
I love a good challenge, man.
Okay.
I do.
Okay.
What comes up for me around that, and it's definitely peeling back the layers of the onion once again. It's something that I'm very accustomed to doing, is that, well, why don't you see me? I am putting out all of that content. I'm just not doing it on social media. In my conversations I have at home, in my conversations I have with my jujitsu teammates, in the conversations, actually, I walked into jujitsu one day and a newly married couple, one of them is standing there, and she goes, "Dave, I really wish you would teach Augustus is his name. We call him Gus. I really wish you would teach Gus to clean." And I immediately went to like, what, clean the kitchen, clean the bathroom. And she had seen a power clean video that I had posted on Instagram, and that's what she was talking about.
Huh.
But I didn't think well enough of myself that I was worthy enough for her to look to me for that on social media. I didn't know that's what she was talking about. How's that for removing the mask and like to playing into this role that I have built for myself in my life?
Yeah.
Of like, you want me to teach him how to clean your kitchen? Well, I think that might be outside of my scope of practice as your jujitsu blue belt teammate.
Yeah.
But I clarified, I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, the power clean. It's, I would love to see him do that. I'm like, fuck yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
Cause it's my thing. It's my jam. Like, I love to do the snatch until I have this, this shoulder thing from an arm bar in jujitsu. So now it's light kettlebell snatches for me from here on out.
I'm with you.
But I can rock the power clean.
Yeah.
And if I could live every day for the rest of my life teaching people how to do the power clean, I would.
It's a brilliant lift. It's one of my favorites. Equal parts patience, equal parts violence, right?
Because that first pull, you can't rush through it.
Right.
Great analogy for life too. When you first get started, you can't rush it.
Right.
And the same thing in the first pull with the power clean.
Right.
You got to be patient with that. And then through second pull, you can accelerate.
Right.
And then through the high pull, you're going to be patient again to get under the bar.
Got to get under that bar. Yeah.
But you got to be fast with your elbows. And then you've got to be controlled when you lower the weight back down to the ground. It's a metaphor for life, just like jujitsu teaches us so much. So does Olympic lifting, because it pushed me to my edge long before I found jujitsu. But will I ever arrive and will I ever master that? No. But that's part of me being a man, and that's part of me on my journey to becoming a man. Is like, am I grunting in the gym? Yes, when I own my own studio, there was afternoons when I'm working out by myself, and you want to talk about solitude versus isolation? I loved working out in the afternoons by myself with the power clean. The gym is empty and I can slam the weight and I can grunt. That's okay for me to be a man in that moment. But what I wouldn't have given to feel like I was part of something bigger with a team, with a partner at that time, as opposed to just filming this power clean video, grunting on social and posting it on social media and letting the social media hear the grunt.
Yeah, hearing it in person.
I want to be seen in the afternoon working out with a partner or a group. I don't want to be seen on social media. And that's a hell of a realization of like, you didn't hear anything about veggies. You didn't hear anything about working out at home. I'm fucking screaming it from the top of my lungs, but nobody's hearing it because they're addicted to the screen. But if it weren't for that screen, you and I never would have met.
Right. It's a tool.
It is a tool, and it's a powerful tool.
Yeah. It's like a chainsaw. It's great when you need to cut down trees. It's not when you're trying to sleep.
Oh man. Say it louder for the people in the back. Well, let's get back to how men, okay. We're going to talk to the men who either aren't ready to get started or they're on the verge of getting started, acknowledging their masculinity and acknowledging the wolf. And how do we get them started, man?
Step one is just to be open. But you have to look at, here's the thing about masculinity that no one really wants to talk about. It is a path. We have to learn skill. We have to do shit. We are not just endowed with masculinity at birth. This is this is why we used to initiate men at 12 or 13 and say that you were a boy and there weren't requirements of you. There weren't skills that you needed to have. There weren't things that you were responsible for. You're a boy. And most often you live with the women. Now we're going to pluck you out of there. We're going to take you out in the woods and fuck with you for a little bit and give you a controlled death of who you used to be. We're going to, and everybody hear this, this is archetypal. We're going to kill the boy so that you actually do get to develop into the man. And we're going to teach you shit. You're going to have a mentor. You're going to have guys who are above you to keep you in line. You're going to have guys next to you to support you. You're going to have guys underneath you soon who you're going to be teaching. You now have a role, and that role comes with responsibility. So for guys who are like, I don't know what to do, just start the journey, start listening to podcasts, start reading books, start asking yourself, how do you answer this question? Who am I as a man? What traits and responsibility, or what traits and endowments were given to me that may not be mine? Who were my teachers around this, right? Was it my older brother? Was it my dad? Was it porn? Was it society? Was it sitcoms? Was it Married with Children? Like, what was it that taught you how to be a man?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get better at this, then just like jujitsu and power cleaning, it requires reps. It requires instruction. It requires practice. Being grounded is a practice. Right? Being able to hold a container for a partner who's having a high level of emotions is a practice. But really, it just starts with that first step of the question of like, hey, what does it mean for me to express myself fully as a man? And
Mm-hmm.
I personally believe there's a primal element. There's a nature element. There's looking back at, what does testosterone make me do? What does it make me feel? How do I relate to the world as someone with a lot of testosterone in their system? What is my background? Who was here before me? Okay, we weren't very long ago. It wasn't very long ago that we stopped living in the woods. What's our relationship to our natural part? Like, are we grounded? Are our feet on the earth? Are there roots going down into the earth? And then there's the
Mm-hmm.
divine side. Are you open to something that's bigger than you? I don't care if that's God. I don't care if that's spirituality. I don't care if that's chakras. I don't give a shit if it's consciousness. I don't care if it's just the sky. But there's something going on here that's got a little bit more order than we do. Okay, and maybe it's just nature again, but it's like, it's grounded. There's a root going down, there's a channel going up. And then hopefully there's a circle of brothers around you. If you don't have that, you're fucking up, guys. You're just missing the boat. You're literally missing the boat. Men need men. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking period. I don't care who wants to argue with me on this one. Men need men. So step one, get around a group of guys. It can be a jiu-jitsu group. It can be a cycling club. I don't care what it is. It doesn't have to be an intentional men's group, but you have to be around people who have had a like-minded experience as you do. There's something alchemical that happens when men are in the same room. We saw it in the gym in Denver. Something happens to our nervous systems. They link up with the other nervous systems in the room and they actually relax. It's like, these are my people. I need to be amongst my people. And for us, it's
Yeah, I
as
hear that.
simple as being around other men.
Yeah. And I recall it's 3.5 years ago now that I started my uh, journey to consciousness, to reconnecting with my masculinity, to understanding what that meant for me, what it means to be a man. And so about 3.5 years ago, I hit an just a raw opening moment. I went through 2 breakups in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And that's oftentimes what I hear men getting started is like, I hit rock bottom. I lost my dream job. I had to start over in my career. I went through a divorce, a breakup, a loss, something that I'm grieving, a family member or a way of life. And that's what I see inspires men to take that first step. It's what I needed. I needed to go seek out a counselor. I needed to go seek out a men's group. Turns out I was in the wrong room for a year, but that's all right. That's part of my conscious journey.
Sure.
And I'm so glad that you brought up nature, because the last time that we talked, it was last July. I think I had just come up on 40, turned birthday. I think it was my birthday week. And I was supposed to go with my church men's group for a weekend of camping. And we didn't have like a campsite. We spent the weekend on a friend of a friend's property outside of Georgetown. Nice enough for this guy to host us during a pandemic when we didn't have a whole lot of information. And 6 or 7 of us go. We all show up on a Friday afternoon. And then the host, who was kind enough to let us use his property, shows up, and it became his show. He's not part of our men's group, but he's part of the same community through church, and he was doing us a huge favor, so we welcomed him in. But it still became his show. Okay, guys, we're going to do this. Okay, guys, we're going to do that. So Saturday morning rolls around, and so we all pile in these 2 cars, and okay, how far is it? It's 30 minutes. Okay, 45 minutes later, we're going up this probably a class 3 road to get to these caves, or not caves, they were mines. We were going to go check out the mines. We were 45 minutes in, and we're like, okay, how much further? We stop, we pause them, we flag them down. Hey, how much further? Oh, it's another half an hour. What are you talking about? Like, one of our guys is getting car sick. He hasn't eaten. I'm getting hangry because I haven't eaten.
Yeah.
And because you and I talked the week before, I felt grounded. I felt centered enough to say, you know what? The guys in our car aren't okay with this. We're actually going to turn around and go take a break and have some lunch. It feels like you're making the decision for me, and I'm not okay with that. And just simply by saying out loud what I wasn't okay with made me even more centered and more grounded, and I could enjoy the rest of the day, and I could let it go.
Good for you, man. That's powerful.
It was powerful.
Yeah, super.
And I reflect back on that because of nature, because like our intention for going out there was to be in a group of men around a campfire for 2 days, connecting with nature, connecting with each other. And there wasn't going to be anything that stood in my way of that.
Yeah. Good on you.
Very empowering. Kill the nice guy.
Fuck yeah.
Who's just going to sit back and take it, right?
Right. And build resentment. You
ready to get to some questions that were submitted by our audience?
Sure.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about why men would want to get started and how men would get started. And one of our members, I lead a group mostly of women, and she wants to know, well, what is the biggest fear men face when starting personal growth?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think it's the accounting, right? Like you and I have both worked with people who have a significant amount of weight to lose. And the step one for me always was, we got to get you on the scale. We got to know what's true. We have to actually deal with reality. And so I think one of the bigger fears that men have is that they've built up an egoic sense of who they are. Like, it's my ego. I have the car, I have the wife, I have the house, I have the 6-figure business. That's not who I am. That's what I've done, but that's where I put all of my attention. That's where I put my self-esteem. That's where I put my self-worth. That's where I put my identity. And so you're going to ask me to take a step away from everything that's made me feel safe in the world, everything that's made me feel okay in the world, everything that's made me feel powerful and communal, and perhaps that I have a sense of belonging. And you're going to ask me now to turn to the left and dive into the abyss, which is this deep sense of questioning, of darkness, of unknowingness, of who I really am, of having to work through challenges. Really, it's this, Dave. It's the unknown, right? How many of us want to get plucked out of our lives right where we are and go, hey, I need you to focus on stuff that's completely foreign to you for the next 5 years. Oh, and by the way, a lot of it is going to be the most brutal work you've ever done. I don't want to paint self-development always like that, but it's hard. It's confronting. Maybe that's a better word. The most confronting work you've ever done. And so I think one of the challenges too with how this is positioned to men, and I know I'm guilty of it as well, is we don't do well at painting the after picture, because the after picture is a set of feelings. Hey, you're going to be calm. You're going to be peaceful. You're going to be joyful. You're going to have less anxiety, less depression. That's a lot harder to sell to a guy than, hey, you're going to have a second shiny red car. You're going to have a third house in Cabo. You're going to have $1 million in your bank account. You're going to have abs. Like, that's a super easy outward way to explain things. The self-development journey is an inward journey. Most men, the vast majority of men, are outward seeking. We're the doers, right? Like, we build shit. This is what we were out in the 3D world. This is 4D and 5D work, which is saying, oh, I have to dive into the cosmos here. I have to dive into consciousness. I have to dive into trauma. I have to look at the things that hurt me, and I may have to live through those. Who the fuck are you to tell me I have to do that when I have a house, a wife, a 6-figure business, 3 cars, and kids in private school? Like, show me where in that picture I'm not kicking ass. You're like, well, how do you feel about yourself? I hate myself, but that's a whole nother conversation. That's not what we're talking about right now.
But it's the one we need to have.
But it's the most important one.
Yeah.
So I think it's really, because this is so unknown, because it is so foreign to men, because it is the emotional realm, it's scary. Just like, and I know there are women who do jujitsu with you, but if I just took a random human off the street, a female, and said, hey, here's what we're going to do. This is our day. We're going to go get big chainsaws. We're going to cut down trees. Then we're going to throw a mouthpiece in your mouth and some gloves on to throw you in a cage, and you're going to fight another human. It's like, it's that foreign to most men. And a lot of women will hear that and be like, the fuck, we are going to go do this. That's how it feels for a lot of guys to go into that inner work. And I know guys, we both know guys who have been in very, very, very intense life situations, military, police, high level shit, who will say, the hardest work I've ever had to do is look in the mirror and confront what happened to me when I was 5, what happened to me when I was 12, how I feel about myself, what happened to me in my marriage, losing that child, losing that whatever, all of that, because I don't think I have the skill for it either. So you can share that with your listener, is that I don't know I have the skill, right? Like you and I, if it's like, hey, here's this scenario. We're going to throw jackets on. We're going to play this game. One of us is going to try to choke the other. The other's going to try to defend and choke you. We'd be like, this is the best thing ever. This game sounds awesome. Holy fuck. I'll pay to play this game, because we have context. That's another big point around it. The self-development world for most men has no context. It's just like, wait, so I have to start journaling, and then I'm going to be crying, and then like, what do I get out of this? And when does it stop? So it's a much more feminine, and I don't use that as womanly. It's a much more feminine energy approach to say, this has no end. It has no goal. It has no directly linkable benefit, but everything will be better when you do it. So trust in the mystery and the magic of the unknown. That sentence to most men is, now you can go fuck yourself. I ain't doing that. That's what most men are afraid of, in my opinion.
Right. I hear that. And now that you bring up the feminine, is that's certainly part of the journey that's really important, is understanding that as a masculine essence person, I still need to know what's happening in the feminine in my body.
100%.
And
100%.
It starts with understanding that men in the room with us, when we choose to gather amongst men, they are not competition, and that they are safe. Mm-hmm. And this is so important for me to understand my feminine, my feminine within me is like, these men are safe because they're here for the same purpose I am. I still don't know where I'm going to end up, and that's okay with me. Mm-hmm. But I understand that when I say out loud, I'm addicted to abusing time, that those two men who were in that exercise with me, there's zero judgment.
Right.
They actually want to understand that more. Mm-hmm. And in reflection helps me understand it more.
Right.
And that's that as what you were describing is part of the journey that's feminine, I accept that. I want that. Like I crave it with my men that I facilitate in the Alliance every Monday.
Mm-hmm. It's so
And
necessary, but you see the brilliance of it, right? You
now I
see
do.
the nourishment of it. Yeah, there's a threshold to pass through because it's foreign, it's uncomfortable. Your first month of jujitsu is like, this is no fun. I don't know why people do this. This is terrible.
I can't
And
sleep at night because my throat hurts so badly. Well, you can't sleep at night in the first 6 months of your personal growth journey either, because your ego hurts.
Exactly. There's a
Because there's a
threshold.
stirring. There's a stirring
Right.
up inside of you, and you're like, oh, I haven't been living.
Right. You have to confront the idea that you are just about to be presented with a series of challenges that you didn't know existed yesterday, but those same challenges have been informing your life and your current behavior for years. So it is this radical moment of honesty. It's getting on the emotional scale and saying, holy shit. And you're right. For the first 6 months, it's like, and there's more. Like I also have to work on this, and working on that didn't solve the problem. It actually opened up this door, which is this deeper thing that I now have to work on, which is why we get to hold a feminine space. We are going to be pregnant for a number of months, if not years. That's like, I just have to hold this pregnant pause and say, I'm okay with this. It's uncomfortable. There's nothing I can do to speed this up. I can't outbuy it. I can't work twice as hard to get through it. It's going to have its own natural process and cycle. And my job is to just bear it with as much grace as I can, and to surround myself with people who have gone through it and say, yeah, we know exactly where you are. We're the black belts. We've been here for a while. We all hated the first couple months. And we all went home and went, oh my God, this was the dumbest thing I ever did. And now look at us going, we're no different than you. We just live differently than you do. That's the difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And touching on that beginning of the journey, I hear in our community so much, and I'm sure that you've heard it too from your audience. There's a lot of really strong women that follow you. I know it for sure. Mm-hmm. And I'm reading The Masculine in Relationship right now. And the foreword is written by Dr. Glover, who we've talked about before. And he describes that giving somebody a book to help them start on a personal growth journey is like first order change. That's like when you buy somebody a book without another person's input. And it's not as strong of a connection tool as second order change. Much like changing your life for you, be the example and let those around you and on your level rise up to meet you. And I found that so powerful of like, how do I get my partner to want to change? That is a question I get all the time.
Every day.
Every day.
Right. You don't.
Yeah, you can't.
You can't. And I'm a little bit more of a dick now, and I throw it back and say, how does he get you to do things that you don't want to do? And they're like, oh, I get it. Like, you nailed it. You start the journey yourself. How I remember this from owning a CrossFit gym. I had this conversation 1,000 times. How do I get my husband in here? How do I get my wife in here? I'm like, you don't. 3 months from now, when you are in kick-ass shape and you're bounding out of bed in the morning and you're eating differently and you're climbing mountains and you're talking about this stuff and your whole body is transformed and your mentality is transformed, they will have no choice but to show up here because they want what you have, and you've just led the way. But if you poke them, if you prod them, if you nag them, if you try to drag them, then you're just going to create resentment, or they're going to come in here for you and they're not going to stay.
That's right.
So just be that shining example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I got this little quote from a friend of yours. I think, every woman wants a man she can't change no matter how hard she tries.
From Jillian, right?
It might be her or Sophie.
Sophie. Yeah.
So
Jillian's is the greatest gift a man can give his woman. It's her inability to change him. And I was like,
yes, I love that too.
Brilliant.
Right.
And that's for people who just heard that, that's a nuanced statement in the context of what we're talking about in sacred relationship or conscious relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love both of those. And then those statements and that little section of our conversation right there is so important to the next one.
Okay.
And how can they support a man while he's making those changes?
Brilliant. 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 It's a beautiful question. First, let's just acknowledge the beauty of the question and say, thank you for even asking it. The second is you just support. You're literally there for him when he needs you. You're not when he's not, because this is a journey that he needs to go on himself. And one of the challenges around relationship, as we've set it up culturally, is that women are naturally positioned, and we're going to go back to a jiu-jitsu metaphor here, as higher belts than men are in the relationship sphere. So one of the challenges I've seen with a lot of women is as their man advances and they become more of an equilibrium, or they come more of an equal level, that's confronting, because now she's not the black belt. Now she may be, he may even surpass her in the relationship domain. But really, it's about just being a loving presence. It's about listening. It's about understanding that this man is going on a journey that's innately not natural to him. And for most women, it is natural to them. This is far more intuitive for them than it is for us. So realize he may be like a big dumb animal for a while, and he's going to be confused. He may be angry. He may be off-putting. He just allow him to have the space to experience everything he's experiencing without having to smother him with your own input. Just like if the roles were reversed, I say this to men all the time: be a great listener. Be empathetic, but don't make her problem yours to fix. So women, don't make him a project that you're fixing. That's not going to work. Just hold exquisite, graceful space for him and allow him to fuck up a little bit. He's going to trip. He's going to come home like, he's going to try to forget it. He's going to get upset. It's the first couple months of any transformation are just uncomfortable until he gets in a rhythm.
Yeah, so very well said. And I like the way that you described this relationship black belt. And I feel as if like it's important to converse about the masculine and the feminine dynamic here of like the masculine leadership in relationship is so important. And for the feminine in this scenario to hold steadfast and create that safe space for him to grow, because once he figures out what leadership means to him, it's going to be so beautiful and so much less stressful. And it's going to be not smoother, but it's going to be calmer as an experience, because as the masculine, I'll feel more grounded if I feel like I can go through that change and that transformation with support and respect and love from my partner.
You nailed it. 100%. 100%.
It's a big part of my journey is understanding what leadership looks like in the container that I want to create with my partner. And then I'm going to hit you with a really hard question here at the end.
Sure.
And I think it's going to sum up our conversation really, really well.
Sure.
All these questions have been great. She makes a statement here. She says, I'm tired of the bashing men idea. I want to know their fears, the ways in which we women keep the status quo alive, both consciously and unconsciously. Even though we complain about it incessantly, how can I support their growth without taking over that for them? And I want to understand my own boundaries in that situation.
Oh, it's a beautiful question. I think we hit a little of it a second ago. I think the most important thing we need to realize and recognize as a society, and this is going to sound like hate speech in 2021, is that men and women are different. Period. Fucking period. And if we just start from that premise, then we don't need to be bashing each other as fun. If you look at any of the stuff I put up social media wise, I never put something up that puts women down, even though I'm going to get a lot of like, yeah, you got it, man. You're right. They're crazy. Yeah. Good for you. And never put any of that shit up, because I don't want to be a part of the cycle or part of the system that creates that difference or creates that tension or creates that looking at someone who is just different than I am and be like, oh, I'm better. Hierarchically, there's zero difference between men and women. Hierarchically, Physically, massive difference. Emotionally, massive difference. So to answer this woman's particular question, begin to celebrate as much as you can about the positive of what men do. This is not a popular thing in the culture, right? I remember talking years ago to a very, very, very vehement, angry feminist who's like, men are useless. Men contributed nothing. I was like, who built your fucking house? That was a team of men. Who built the roads that you drive up and down on? Who drives the food that you eat to the supermarket? Most likely male truckers. Who built the phone that you're holding on to? Who started the company? Who yada, yada, yada. There's so much that men do that just gets pushed to the side because a couple of us are real fuck faces. And so they make the press. But we look at the male animal as this like non-contributing, has no use idea until we need one, right? Like they're no good men, they're no good men, or they're no good men. Oh, well, okay, cool. Now we there's a fire in California. I think we need to redefine toxic masculinity. Oh, there's an invading force in the world. Okay, cool. We need some. Oh, wow. There's someone walking around shooting. Okay, we better get some guys out there who are willing to die to stop this. So celebrate that. And for women listening, celebrate the masculine in yourself. What about the masculine? What about something that brings structure and order to chaos is beautiful? What does that free you and allow you to do? Here's the thing that we're missing culturally, Dave, is that when we actually work together, women are the pathway to higher levels of consciousness, period in my mind. Spiritually more advanced, consciously more advanced. What they need is a foundation of safety and groundedness underneath them. I have I actually celebrate being in that role. For my partnership, I tell her, this is what I'm going to handle. And I'm going to handle this lower rung stuff exquisitely so that you are free to rise, because when you rise, I go with you. I would much rather be taken on the journey of consciousness than pretend that I'm actually better at it and say to her like, hey, you handle all the details and the leading and all that and the 3D shit. No, we have to come together and say, what's your talent? What's my talent? Why aren't we utilizing each other's talents together as opposed to pointing out our differences and making jokes and memes and fun and shame about it? So that's really my answer to that woman, is celebrate what's amazing about men. And it doesn't mean excuse all the fucked up shit that men do, but I'm about to use a sentence that's going to freak people out. It isn't all men, right? It isn't all men who are problematic. So celebrate the ones that are doing the things that you want. For us, tell men, like, it's not all women aren't crazy. Stop that shit. Yes, you've run into some psychotic women in your life. All of us have. But yet when we paint with these broad stroke brushes, then we just get stuck. And we're stuck as a society. We're so stuck. Mm-hmm. We're exactly where we were decades ago in very certain realms. Like we just don't get along well. Why? Because we're looking at each other and not saying, wow, you have a talent I don't. As opposed to squashing that talent, I'm going to celebrate and elevate it. I have a talent you don't. As opposed to squashing it and shaming it, celebrate and elevate it. This is how we got to get back to unity. We have to get back to, and I get it. There's pain that both sides have to work through so that we don't see each other as perpetrators. That's another big challenge, even though there's been perpetration, a lot of it. But I don't think we're going to get through to the perpetration until we can see each other as human, until we can recognize the humanity in each of us. Men recognize the humanity and how much suffering has been enacted on women by us. Women see how much suffering and trauma has been enacted on us by us, or in some cases by women, just in a different flavor. Mm-hmm. This is how we get back to humanity. We get back to support. We get back to understanding. We seek to understand. Oh, you're different? Let me ask you questions. Opposed to that's dumb. Let me seek to ask questions. Yeah. Let me be curious. And then let me celebrate the fuck out of you for what you get to bring to this earth that I can't. Mm-hmm. That's how.
Yeah, I feel like celebrating each other for our differences and for what we can bring to the table and what each person has as a uniqueness to themselves. celebrating that helps us rewrite the story of there are no good fill in the blank. They're all crazy on fill in the blank, or I'm only seeing this person in my dating world. Like when we celebrate those differences and those similarities and the uniqueness that we bring, then we rewrite that story and we're able to pull back the layers of our limiting beliefs,
Our biases. Yeah, for sure.
our biases. Yeah. And we're able to see the forest for the trees.
100%.
Yeah. Traver, man, it's so good to catch up with you, brother.
Thank you, brother.
We talked about so much today, but if there's one thing that you want to leave us with that you feel would help move us toward a more united future, what would that be?
Deal with your shit, right? Like deal with your shit. Everybody has biases. I have biases. I have challenges in my relationship that have nothing to do with my partner, even though every fiber in my being wants to blame her. She has challenges in our relationship that have nothing to do with me. Just everybody take a breath, slow down, put your phones down for a minute, spend some time with yourself. Cultivate a sense of relationship and intimacy with the person who's staring at you in the mirror. When you actually start even more basic, when you like, respect, and then love them, everything in your life changes, especially the people who you attract. So yeah, start with you. Celebrate you. Whoever's listening to this, celebrate you. I've asked a number of guys, Dave, tell me what you're proud of in your life about you. And they're like, bro, I'm not fucking doing that. I'm like, no, you have to do it. I'm making you do it. And then the tears come, right? Tell yourself the things that you need to hear. Give yourself the gifts that you're hoping to get from your partners. Give yourself the gift that you're hoping to get from the world. When you are solid, when you are nourished, when you are resourced, then and only then are you able to serve. And that is why we're all here to serve. I'll leave you with that.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
I'm spending less and less time there now consciously, but I still am on Instagram mostly, and that's at Traver Boehm, TraverBoehm, or go to my website, manuncivilized.com. Get yourself a copy of my book, men or women. I have equal numbers of people saying this taught me more about men than anything I've ever read. And I have couples reading it, Dave. This is fascinating. I had an email this morning from a woman, and my husband and I have read it, and she said, this is all the stuff I've been trying to tell him for years. And so I'm not trying to just put it on my own writing because that shit came through me from another place. But all of you, please get your hands on my book.
Yeah, her words pretty much sum up like a general feeling of that lack of unity between the two. Is like, I've been telling him for years.
Right.
Well, it goes back to the conversation of like, why would a man want to get started?
Yeah.
He must do it for himself.
Yeah.
And not by himself, though, because he needs a group of men to support him along that journey.
100%.
Yeah. All right, man.
Have a great rest of your day.
Let's spar soon.
Yes, please, please, please. Cheers, brother.
What did you think of today's conversation? Head on over to Instagram, give us a follow, and send me a direct message. I can't wait to have you as a part of our New Look community with better coaching, better podcast interviews, and a whole lot more alignment in our mission, vision, and purpose. This is Dave Glazer, host of the Challenger podcast, wishing you health and happiness wherever you're at in the world.